Brother, are you all right?
No, I am not all right. I just shared a bottle of Kanar with Damar. That rhymes.
You're drunk.
Of course I'm drunk.
Well, good morning, evening, and afternoon to everyone. No, I am not drunk at the moment, and I kinda... Although I wouldn't be surprised, I would be lauding the furball if he was. Seeing as how
No.
it's what, 6 in the morning? 5 in the morning?
No, it's 5 in the morning, and I have a pot of coffee brewing at the moment.
But yeah, as you can see, it's only the two of us because, well, work schedules change, so Thoughts by Jay Brown is stuck at work. Ha ha.
Hey, Jay.
And what actually really surprises me is, aren't the Germans supposed to be punctual? I just remember this thing about precision and attention to detail that they, as a people, they tended to pride themselves on.
Yeah, well, not all of them. They can't all be perfect.
But wasn't that the point of everything about 70 years ago?
Ooh. Ooh.
Oh, wait. Before his time. That's right.
Yeah, somebody before him did come up with a solution to all those problems. You might say that it was like, was it the last solution, the ultimate solution?
I think there was supposed to be some sort of finality to it, but
Yeah.
but I'm still wondering what the problem was.
Germans are assholes. That's what the problem was.
Okay,
Well, they were, at least.
okay. I can't deny that because, yeah, I am a bit of an asshole. But, so actually, question for the few people we have out watching. What did you think of that clip to start the show? And while we wait for them, I have to say, there have been a number of postings Trek-related that have come across my screen in the last few days, some of which were interesting, such as one of the videos that Lore Reloaded recently did, where I have to give the guy credit. I don't always agree with him politically, but he at least can make fun of himself. And when there were other ones, just real analysis of the older, more appropriate Trek series. But what is really... what I've really been looking forward to for this is... there's been the second trailer for Star Trek Picard.
Oh.
And I want it to be good. I would like it to be good, but...
my hopes are up. But I got excited about Star Wars a couple years ago, and Disney destroyed my childhood.
I mean, I'm willing to treat Discovery as its own thing. I'm willing to kind of put that in a box and set it aside. Kind of what a lot of people do with the animated series. Because while I would say the animated series is closer to applicable canon than Discovery as of right now, it will be fascinating to see how they actually end up going with the Picard series, because I understand why the cameos they chose are.
Yeah, because there's other appearances that are supposed to be coming up that weren't in the cameos.
Well, it's one of those, pretty much every actor from who was a main recurring enjoyable character for popularity's sake, I see at least making a face appearance at some point during season 1, because I really do think that CBS actually listened to a good amount of the criticism they got about Discovery and how it wasn't it they really missed the mark with a lot of the older audience who they really needed to keep as a staple, because guess what? Who are the ones with the money that are actually going to keep your series going? Yeah, it's us. It's not so much the younger generation at this point. They're kind of, attention is divided. So you need to be able to bridge the gap between the two to make it a viable show and keep it going, just from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, and this one does it tickles you in all the right spots just watching the commercial.
Yeah, but in the back, I have enough of a memory to know that, yeah, but they screwed up Discovery. So how is it going to play out on this one? Especially because, I find the connection with Seven of Nine being an intriguing one, because how are they going to play that in? Because she is quite literally the Borg specialist, other than Janeway, if you go off a canon, and even the beta canon that's been established after the end of Voyager. But the real intrigue, the more questionable one, is with the return of Brent Spiner. And is that Data? Is it B4 plus?
Yeah.
How are they going to play that in? Or are they even going to address that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm almost thinking it's going to be B4, just so that they don't piss off prior canon like they did with Voyager, as much as that series did. Because if you just flat out bring back Data, that means like, okay, now we're in the comics universe. We can bring anybody back to life just because we want to.
Yeah. Well, and even then, if you go with I'm assuming you're referencing the graphic novel comic that was done prior to the JJ verse.
I'm just talking any comic books, because in comic books, just because you're dead doesn't mean you're dead.
Yeah. Oh, fucking Marvel is notorious for that one. So, someone's already put out the question in the chat, well, more comment, Data better not look old. And from what I've heard and from the reports that have come out, they actually have improved the anti-aging CGI that really was first used heavily in Tron Legacy, to where it doesn't look as plastic and fake.
Yeah, as long as we're not in that blatant uncanny valley, I think most people should accept it generally. But with Data, that's not that hard to fake.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like he had a human face to begin with.
Yeah,
So
because of the makeup, there is enough to play it off and actually be able to use that tech. Now, Brainery mentioned Data is an android replication, yo. Except that's part of the problem with that, is they've already established in universe that trying to replicate a Soong type android was impossible. Even Data himself couldn't do it.
Yeah, he can't be replicated. So, and again, even if they do replicate, that kind of shites on prior canon with the last movie, even though the last movie was not the greatest received of all the series. It prevents the retconning. I'm hoping they don't retcon it, because they've tried to fix things in the past by just like, oh, well, yeah, we were wrong about that. We were just pretending. We were kidding. And that just means that everything from this series, if they get it wrong this season, they can fix it next season. So they need to get it right the first time.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is put the forethought into it so you don't have those glaring mistakes like, aw, and Blake's connection dropped out. But to it, there he goes, he's back. Yeah, so putting the forethought into it in this series as opposed to trying to ad hoc it the way it appeared that they did for definitely season 1 of Discovery and also into season 2, just forethought. Actually have a plan and stick mostly to it. There are parts of narrative that you can change on the fly and not have massive ramifications. But we did get the question from NANA, wasn't Data's memory backed up? Yes, that's actually what we're referring to when it comes to Nemesis, because a few scenes prior to the battle with with Shinzon and the scimitar, where Data sacrificed himself to save the Enterprise, Data tried to override B4's memory engrams with his own, essentially trying to copy his experiences into B4, who, if you can tell from the one they got B4 activated, was very childlike.
Yeah, it was newbornish.
Yeah.
Why? So, and even if they were able to copy him over, he is a prior incarnation of the experiment. Doesn't mean that his neural network could even be imprinted upon B4 accurately to recreate the being as it was.
Yeah, and I think that's more where I'm hopeful is, okay, seeing all these questions, seeing all these potential hurdles, let's see if they actually got a creative team and a writing staff that can appropriately handle Star Trek and a lot of these major events that have been established in canon without just saying, nope, we're starting a new universe all over. Which I understand why they let JJ do that. Because going back to that era, that was their only option, was to do a true reboot and actually have it be an alternate timeline. Which, that's the thing.
It's an ingenious way to do it if you can pull it off right, because rather than just tell the stories that we know and tell the stories in between the things we know, because like, okay, everybody has plot armor if you're just telling history. Mm-hmm. So I can understand, I seriously understand the intrigue of doing a rewrite of history just so that you can tell your own story, but you've got to be real careful with it. Otherwise, you're going to screw it up hardcore.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Is if you want that creative license, if you want that flexibility, you got to do something major like that. So, while falling back on a time travel, time loop trope to do it is one thing, I could give it a pass because they needed to do something for what they were trying to do. Now, had they managed that segment a little better and actually been able to market it more appropriately, the movies probably wouldn't have tailed off the way it did. But part of that is when you look at the first two movies, you have the origin story, and I like how they saved the rendition of the title sequence music until the very end of the first JJ verse movie. Yeah. I actually think that was a very good touch because it's not Trek if it's not Kirk as captain, Spock as the first officer, and if you don't establish the crew and the setting in that way, you can't really use that music, in my opinion. And so I agreed with him on that. But then for Into Darkness to... Yeah, Into Darkness was the second one. For it essentially to be a Wrath of Khan 2.0.
Yeah. It's not Khan. I swear to God, it's not Khan. I promise you it's not Khan. Guess what? It's Khan!
Yeah, which that is... That was it, is you can understand how they needed to establish things and tweak things in the first movie, and with the launch and the proper marketing that it got, it was a success. But then Into Darkness did that, and it wasn't quite the commercial success, which was actually the opposite of the original movies, which I found rather fascinating.
Oh God! If you want to go to the original movies, like the greatest meat hook abortion ever, the motion picture.
Well, and I can see why it happened that way, though. And yeah, it is. It started off the trend of the odd number movies just being misfires. And,
Yeah.
And it was because, well, really what it was is, at first, they were not developing for a movie. They were developing for a series, and specifically the pilot to a series. And then when they got the budget and the studio said, screw it, let's make it a movie, they didn't really change the story, which is why it was a slow-moving storyline, because it was written for about a 45, 50-minute actual screen time. Not 2 and a little over 2 hours.
Yeah. It's amazing how they got that 30 minutes of plot crammed in to 2 hours of movie.
Yeah. Now, granted, the visuals were phenomenal, especially considering the time. And the introduction of the redesign of the ship.
Yeah, that was good.
That's actually aesthetically my favorite ship from the Federation. The refit Constitution. There's just a sleekness and an elegance to it that hasn't been matched.
Mm-hmm.
But
so with Data, my question to you, Jared, would be then, what is your desire? What do you think it's going to be?
What I think and what I hope it is, I believe are going to be the same thing, which is that Geordi found a way to actually get the overlay of Data's neural net and especially the memory engrams to take hold in B4. Because
with original memory or with as a starting point?
As the base layer where the memories are there, the programming is there. Whether or not I would call the entity truly Data really goes into the philosophical question of what makes an individual that person.
Yeah.
Which I could see that being a point of an episode during season 1, because that was the thing with Trek, is they would always touch on those philosophical questions like that. I mean, just when it came to Data and artificial life specifically, there were the 2 noticeable times that they did it. Once in Voyager, with the Doctor and his Hollow novel, but also before that in TNG with Measure of a Man, specifically with Data himself.
Yeah.
From you,
yeah, I've been.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I've been binging on Voyager recently, and I've watched a handful of the movies here and there, and it just dawned on me. I can't remember what I was watching. One of these captains has to think at some point, how many times have I activated the self-destruct? Is this a reflection upon my command, or do we just keep getting into bad situations? It's like, you shouldn't be saying that once a year.
Well, to be fair with Voyager, they were in a unique situation. Now, granted, I think because of that unique situation, they failed in other areas of writing in the series. But when you look at the other Trek series where the Federation is operating within its own space and along the fringes and along the borders, how many times did Picard do it? 3 in 7 years?
Yeah, I'm not positive.
And let's see, there was the...
Well, he did it in Nemesis.
Did in Nemesis. Did it in... even before that, even just in the series, because you have the incident with the Binars. It was activated then. But then you have a couple accidental activations. But when it comes to deliberate, yeah, there really weren't many. But then look at the original series. Kirk activated it once in the series, and then actually used it in Search for Spock.
At the end of 3. Yep.
Yeah.
That was, even though it's an odd number movie, that was a poignant scene. The ending when they actually activation and when it dets and they're on surface watching it happen. I did enjoy that scene because it harkens to the military aspect of it, of watching your ship go down.
Yeah, and the line that they wrote for Kirk in that moment was perfect. My God, Bones, what have I done?
Mm-hmm.
And especially in that moment, because they weren't guaranteed to get off a planet that they knew was quite literally falling apart.
Oh, yeah. Not just, I mean, it was a hostile planet, but not in the traditional term of hostile. It's very infrequent that the planet itself is hostile towards you.
At least in the way
Geographic
that
terms.
One was. The
geologic terms.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping with Data, the only thing I'm hoping for is that it is not Data. If it is 100% Data, it's just going to feel bastardized. If it is, I almost hope that it's B4 without any Data, and Picard has spent the last 15 years trying to grow him into what Data became.
And
if he found him right, at the end of Nemesis, or kept him right at the end of Nemesis, and has grown him since then, they're not going to be similar, but I think that would be a great friendship and partnership in Picard's retirement. So by the time this series happens, they will have a bond similar to the Data bond, but not Data. I don't know. I'm torn. I almost hope it's that.
Well, with Data, you definitely have that what started out as pure professionalism, because you gotta admit, for the majority of TNG, Picard really stuck to that no fraternization line between commander and subordinates. There was one noticeable incident where he didn't, and it bit him, and he recognized and learned from it and really shut down, which is where it later on it became weird with Crusher, but the difference was he already had the personal history with Crusher, with
Deanna.
Beverly.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking Crusher. Yeah.
And so you can kind of give the show a bit of leeway on that, but outside of that, he was very, very much. Now, commander, subordinate, the two shall not mix. But then they ended the series in general with him joining one of the poker games.
Yeah.
So
So
going from that and then some of the dialogue in the movies, I could see that being a thing where Picard is there alongside with helping along that maturation of B4. That would
yeah.
be the best way to do it.
Is Crusher confirmed as a or not Crusher, Beverly confirmed as a character?
Not that I have seen, but it would be interesting to see how they go about it, especially with the alternate timeline hints that they gave during All Good Things.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those, with where they were going with that, you could see them establishing a relationship further than what they were.
I mean, he could leave her at home. They could be married. They could be on the farm together, and something happens, and he has to leave her at home so that she could be a temporary character. But I don't know if that would be a Picard thing to do.
It wouldn't, and also it wouldn't be a Crusher thing to do, because how many times has she told him, "Screw you, I'm doing this anyways."
Yeah. Yeah, if she's there, if they're married, she's going with him.
Yeah. And they haven't shown, just because they haven't shown her so far, doesn't mean that at some point they won't bring the character in. And so we do have a question from You Wished that could be interesting. What do you think of the idea of Picard as in a more civilian capacity going toward actually getting his hands on the Stargazer and using that as his ship during the series?
It'd be interesting. It'd be a nice harken back to the old day. But was the Stargazer really that big of a platform, or that big of a plot point in Star Trek lore to make it something that that'll harken back to days of yore? It's different. It's different from when Kirk stole the Enterprise.
Well, when Kirk stole the Enterprise, he had just gotten back, found out they weren't repairing it, that they were going to decommission it. And at the same time, you add that stressor of him finding out what was actually going on with McCoy and Spock, and it was like, well, they're getting rid of my ship anyways. They're not willing. Command is not willing to help me in light of this new information. Screw it, I'm doing it on my own because, well, he's Kirk.
Yeah.
And so you have that aspect to it. If the Stargazer was to be brought out, it's already been either laid up as a museum ship, mothball type situation, or it doesn't exist anymore. Because keep in mind, this is a length of time after the Dominion War. And while in DS9 they didn't show every single ship that was involved, I'm willing to bet, especially early on, if the Stargazer was usable in the first 6-7 months of the conflict, of the actual hostilities with the Dominion, it would have been reactivated then and probably heavily damaged or destroyed during one of the battles.
Yeah.
And as for the historical aspect, they did make the Stargazer an integral piece of his backstory, both with the issue with the Ferengi when they brought it back, and who was it? It wasn't Damon Bach. It was one of the other actual named Ferengi who wanted to get revenge because his son was on the Ferengi ship that got destroyed. And it was from that point on you actually see a model of the Stargazer in his ready room, whereas prior to that, it was a Constitution refit that was in its place.
Okay.
So selecting that ship would have that nostalgia. It's just a question of, would it actually be surviving in a condition that it could be usable?
Yeah.
That's where I have my
'Cause
doubts.
interesting if it was a real world question in the Star Trek universe. Do you think they would mothball something that big, or would it be recycled?
Well, and
Because that's a lot of resources.
that's another thing. With it having the history tied to Picard, I could see them potentially making it a museum ship.
Mm-hmm.
However, this would have been prior to pre-Dominion War, and then again, look at the kit bashes that came out of the Dominion War arc. You know that they were going to be scrambling for stuff.
Yeah.
So that's where I doubt the ship surviving that conflict, which
Yeah.
that is the crux. How do they where are they going with Starfleet and the Federation in general post Dominion War in canon? Because we do have the story arcs from Star Trek Online, which really is beta canon at best.
Yeah.
But it can give them potential avenues and adversaries to bring out. And we did get a couple super chats. So, our favorite Aussie Globehead, 50 Australian. NASA said I can send this. And then from our good MA2 leader of the security forces, guess I need to watch more Star Trek to be cool. No, but we can get you
I
there.
told you you're already cool. Hey, Jared. So the plot line, it seems like the underlying plot line for Picard is going to be Borg related. Um, did you catch the Easter egg or the joke that was in the Romulan Borg jail facility?
No.
Just give me 1 second. I'll share screen. This is a screenshot of the preview. Let's see. A window. Allow. Can you see?
Okay. So at least they have.
This facility has gone 5,843 days without an assimilation.
That is fantastic. And if they keep that kind of little nods and humor here and there,
Yeah.
I have hope for the creative and writing teams in that aspect if they think to do that.
And just so you know, that is 16 years. Well,
Well-
Earth year. What are you talking about? Are we talking Romulan days or are we talking Earth days?
Well, and generally something like that, they would actually go with the standard 26-hour day. Because that's another thing that actually you don't really get a clue into until you get into DS9. What actually constitutes a day in the Federation? Like, what planetary standard did they go with? And apparently what they did is they actually did an average. They did an aggregate and came up to the 26 standard hours. So got a couple messages from Bo regarding Data. With the possible loss of Data's right to be an individual and not Starfleet property, Picard, Data, and Geordi could have made arrangements to archive enough of the ship's memory banks to make room for a complete Data backup of Data.
But does a backup make a Data?
Well, and again, Bo, I'm not sure if you were here at the beginning, towards the beginning where we mentioned it. That goes back to the philosophical question: what makes an individual that person? Because it's kind of like the whole. Actually, there was a time another time where they kind of touched on this one in TNG, and that was with the quite literal creation of Thomas Riker, where he was an exact copy of the original William Riker, but got separated during transport, so a copy of him got reflected back to the planet while the pattern continued on. So,
Yeah, that's a continual trope at least once in every series.
true. Further on, or would it be unreasonable to think that before Data downloaded Lul's memories into his own brain, Geordi made a hasty memory dump of him? Not so much then. What I actually go with is actually just going with what we have seen on screen. Data's initial memory programming was taken from direct scans and accounts of the inhabitants of Omicron Theta that Soong had interactions with, and actually, I'm assuming, got their permission to be a part of the project in that aspect. But then go to essentially Data's mother. Soong, the pinnacle of his androids, he made one that, by all scans and even transporter logs, appeared to be human, acted as if human, had the memories of the original person active to the point where the android believed they were the person in human. Granted, he also wrote in the subroutine that if she ever found out she wasn't, she would deactivate and essentially die. But again, this is where, in this aspect, so Peter Harrington just said, just because you put the same hard drive in a computer does not mean that it'll be the same. And that's where we actually go on the issue with Data and B4. B4 was an older platform. Still had the same physical capabilities as Data, but the positronic net and the mental capabilities weren't there.
Yeah. So if it is Data, now here's a wild leap. If it is going to be actually Data, just imagine right before Data transported over to save Picard. Give me 1 second. I think it's going to be this one. Gotta make sure I got the right picture up. Just imagine Spock as Data,
Mm-hmm.
and McCoy as B4, and his fingers are USB sticks.
Well, yeah, that's essentially what he did initially. And one of the
I want a scene like this. I think that would be hilarious. If he like walks by him, like sticks a finger in, downloads himself, and then gets on the transport pad.
Well, no. So what you actually happen if you go back and watch Nemesis, those optical data links that Geordi would use to literally plug data into the ship for diagnostic purposes. Data uses one of those from himself to B4.
Yeah.
From NANA, if the doc from Voyager was a sentient being, I don't see why they couldn't bring Data back. I want Data back.
Yeah.
I want it done in a way that doesn't wreck anything else in the series canon. That is the biggest thing. I'm all for changes and these plot points and nuances to a story, but don't create a dozen other issues by having one nifty feature. Discovery.
Yeah, I want Data back as well, but it's got to be done right.
That's it. I think that really is the biggest thing, is figuring out what does it mean for it to be done right.
I don't know.
Bo, don't bring up that moment because I just might have figured out a great way to end the show.
Life forms, you precious little life forms. Where are you? Do-do-do-do-do.
Does Spock have to flip his hands 2 times to insert the USB? You know what? That is so freaking true. A USB connection, at least a USB-A connection, 50-50 chance of getting it right. You get it wrong 80% of the time.
Even when you're right, half of the time you think you're wrong. Yeah, I'm scrubbing through the trailer right now, just looking to see if there's anything else that jumps out at me. I'm excited. I am honestly excited. I sent it to my wife a couple days ago, and she had no idea it was coming, and she just sent me back a shocked face. So I'm hoping it's good. And the nice thing about it being on Prime, though, as much as I love Netflix, I'm still torn on whether I like the series dump or the weekly broadcast. Because I like binging on Stranger Things, but I also like the anticipation.
Yeah, it's definitely a fine balance between the two that you have to get with that because, like, actually on Hulu, my wife is really into the series Harlots, and yeah, seasons 1 and 2 you can go and binge watch that right now, but season 3 weekly releases, which I can understand why they do it because it's driving return traffic, and it's like, hey, great, we got this to wet your whistle. You're going to watch this, but then you're going to get captured and more likely watch something else.
Yeah.
And you'll end up driving that viewer retention in that way because I'm not sure how many people are like me, but when it comes to being able to binge an entire series of something or an entire season of something, I'll end up using it as white noise in the background, oftentimes. Especially if it's an older series that I've already watched.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I've been doing with Voyager. I've got Voyager on in the background while I'm editing videos.
Yeah.
But I can't do it with something that I want to actively sit down and pay attention to.
Yeah.
But and the risk with doing the dump is, and I'd like to actually know the data on this, or the data on this, spikes in subscription rates with an immediate cancellation after specific seasons dump. Because I'll admit it, when Stranger Things came out, I toasted it in a day. I was done. I finished it in a day. But I've got a permanent subscription. I'm not going to dump Netflix. But I'm positive there's people out there that get the subscription for one series and then walk away until next year.
Oh yeah, there are people who do that with like the HBO tie-in upgrades or even HBO's streaming service by itself. I'm sure, like especially in the last couple years when Game of Thrones and how much time in between they took, they probably had a lot of influx of people who were doing just that. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll pay this little bit for a couple months to get the current season, but then after that, nope, don't need it.
Yeah.
Premise weird. They'll do great shows like The Tick or the Heaven and Hell series. Oh yeah, what was that? Omens. But this is so. There was a question from Pig, and I know
Oh yeah.
where he's going with it.
I responded that they will be our overlords soon.
No, Hypnotoad's gonna get him.
That's another series that I can just hit play and leave it go all day.
Yeah, although you know what, I know it's not exactly on topic, but Rick and Morty is coming back, and I can't effing wait.
So I've probably watched like 6 episodes of Rick and Morty. I'm sorry. Please let me come back next month. I will have more watched by then.
Actually, you have 2 weeks.
All right, I know what I'm doing in the next 2 weeks.
Well, and that's the thing well, and here's the thing with Rick and Morty, they're the episodes themselves are short enough. You can actually get through the 3 seasons that they have pretty quick.
Have we seen the TNG edits by Garzona and Andrew Hussey?
I
Haven't
have
seen that.
not.
Is Futurama not on Netflix anymore, Pig?
Good question.
I don't, because I swear I watched it a couple weeks or like a month or two ago.
Well, that's another thing with Netflix is they're constantly every month there are things dropping off and new things coming on, and it I
But there are
do.
certain things that should never go away. I mean, there are certain TV series that should be written into constitutional law that will forever be available in streaming format. And that's one of them. Nope, just Hulu. Okay, I'm good. I have Hulu too.
Okay. All right, and so they need to have good writers for season 4, though. Season 3 was overall pretty weak. Okay, LRJ, how much of the background story about Rick and Morty do you know? Because there's actually a very good real world reason why Rick and Morty ended up playing the way it did, and clues were given to it during the end credit sequences. So LRJ, if you go back and pay attention at the end of each episode in season 1. You have the claymation still images of a man and his wife. Then in season 2, it's just the man and the dog. What actually, and a lot of people thought that this was tied in just to the relationship between Beth and Jerry on screen. Oh no. It was actually between the series creator and his wife, who was part of the creative team of the series. To where things were great season 1. They actually separated season 2. And the divorce and everything was finalized during the production of season 3. And she was no longer a daily part of it by time season 3 started. So they actually lost part of the creative team that helped make Rick and Morty what it was up to that point. So again, I can see why things went that way. So I'm optimistic that with the amount of time that has elapsed from then till now and them starting the season 4, if they're doing it, they got it figured out. Now here's my question. Is Evil Morty going to make an appearance and if so, when?
Did you see Bo's question?
Oh, jeez. Yeah, so for for those only listening, this is how you blow up this episode of Kanar with Damar. And the question is, will they try to bring back Genevieve Bujold and cast her as number 2 or a bridge officer? For those who are unaware, that is the original actress that was brought on to play the role of Catherine Janeway. And I say no.
I don't know if I've ever. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've ever even seen the auditions or any of the footage of her.
Oh,
I knew she. Yeah, I knew she was supposed to be, but I don't think I've ever actually seen her act the part.
on YouTube, there is a video. I want to say it was put out by Junkball Media, where the footage that they filmed for the pilot with
Oh yeah, I just
Bujold
found it.
was in there. And they compared it to the same scenes that they did with Kate Mulgrew. And it is damn near verbatim, line for line. And you could see the difference. And part of it is, I think, going with Kate Mulgrew in that aspect compared to Bujold was the right choice, not just because in how the character was delivered by Mulgrew, but when you look in the background, and I'm pretty sure in that video it even says, Bujold was unaware of just how full and how demanding the schedule of a weekly show in the US is, especially one that is an hour time slot on TV.
Oh yeah, and 24 episodes per season.
Yeah.
Or no, actually, most seasons was more than that. It was like 28. Yeah, so that's more than a full-time job. Yeah, I'll have to watch that later. It would be interesting. Because, I mean, so she's not referenced in the series, so it's not like bringing back Pike,
Yeah.
which was a great concept. Well, great concept considering that the original version of Pike was able to roll around and go boop, boop, boop. Like, future technology is wonderful, people.
Well, yeah. Well, and that's another thing. That is the thing a lot of the supporters of Discovery go with is like, oh, but a lot of this stuff had to change. I mean, look how dated the original series was. It's like, yeah, but you can also give reasons why going that route would still be viable, because let's think about it. The Dragon space capsule, or even what they're looking at for doing for the Mars mission.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're using touchscreens for those interfaces? I mean, better yet, all the updates to military aircraft. Yes, there are some.
Oh yeah.
Yes, there are some glass displays, but the actual interface by the user, are they touchscreen?
Well, everything in Dragon is supposed to be touchscreen, isn't it?
Dragon is trying to get there, but here is the thing. How
It's
do
got to
you,
have a backup.
oh, well, not just it has to have a backup. Not just that. Think about what the crew is wearing during transit. They quite literally have to create a new touchscreen interface that will actually be usable with the equipment and with what the crew is going to be wearing during launch and re-entry.
And there's something else that you have to think about when comparing touchscreen to toggle switches, is that with a touchscreen, you can't put a little protective button over the "oh fuck, we're about to die" switch like you can with a toggle.
Yeah.
You know, all of the vital switches, the "don't touch me unless it's an emergency," have a protective cover on the top of it. Can't do that with a touchscreen, other than make me touch it 3 times in a row while I'm bouncing around, aiming across the capsule, poking at a screen.
Or even a press and hold, but even then, the most oftentimes you're going to be using that, you're going to be in your full flight suit that is required for takeoff and for launch and recovery.
Yeah,
Good
Zaphod,
luck.
it is mostly touchscreen, but it also hasn't been flown yet. We haven't seen the operational version of it with humans at the controls.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is there is something. There's a reason why Tom wanted to go with a basic stick and throttle for the Delta Flyer. It's just a different feeling you get as opposed to pressing a button.
And you all saw what happened with Mark Sargent when he tried to use a touchscreen. and that was on Earth. I don't even get a laugh out of that. Come on, Jared.
Oh, oh my God. And for him to try to say, "Oh no, that was just intentional for the camera. I knew different." Uh-huh.
No, yeah. I told you that I got an email back from the producer on that, right?
I remember you mentioning
Yeah.
that somewhere. So what exactly, like, what was the response that you ended up getting when you were fact checking some of this stuff?
So that's the only thing I fact check, because my interviews I'm not trying to fact check. You guys can fact check. I'm great with that. But I don't want to, because then that might prevent people from coming back.
True, but you did interface with the actual production crew of that.
So I sent the producer an email saying, oh, also a little tip. So they've got their company email address, or the ending. It's deltavproductions.com.
Mm-hmm.
And it had his wife and everybody else by first name. It listed on their website of contacts, but it didn't have the producer. And the producer's name was Daniel. So I just guessed that his name would also be the first name on his email address, and it was right. And so it was shot in the dark. So I said, Daniel, I recently interviewed Mark Sargent for my YouTube channel. I was wondering if you could clarify something. In the link is a short clip of my interview regarding Mark, regarding him not seeing the button at the NASA facility. Are you able to comment on the accuracy of this statement? And remember, Mark's was that I hit the button, it didn't work. I touched the screen, it didn't work. And then we walked away.
Mm-hmm.
So he responded, Hi, Blake. Thank you for reaching out to me. I don't think he saw the button. That account is inconsistent with the footage we have and Patricia's live recording. I also, in the fact-checking phase of our project, called Houston Space Center and was assured that the splashdown simulation was working and not malfunctioning during the day we were filming. Best, Daniel.
Ah,
The truth will get you every time.
yeah.
So, back to Star Trek.
Oh,
Off the flat Earth and back to Star Trek.
yeah, so from LRJ88. Actually, why didn't the crew manage to set off more alarms and accidentally fire off torpedoes when they were flung about in any of the Star Trek shows? That'd be easy with touchscreens.
Yeah.
And you have that, but at the same time, for the newer Trek ones, you have that question of were the torpedoes armed and loaded, because there is a reduced cyclic rate to firing the photon torpedoes just simply because of the loading mechanism, which, but at the same time,
But still,
I can see where the question comes from.
Around.
Well,
Yeah.
not just that, with a touchscreen all over, and you're rocked and you just go to support yourself and you just mash buttons on a touch display. Ooh.
Oh shit, I just ejected all of the emergency escape pods.
Yeah.
And there were no seat belts.
But why would you need seatbelts if you have inertial dampeners? Oh wait, those fuckers go offline all the time. And yet, with all the times that they go offline, how many times has a crew actually shown or been reported on screen to have been injured because of it? Not killed, just injured.
Oh yeah, every time somebody gets escorted off the bridge.
Well, yeah, well that's because of them flaming off, but I'm showing, like, if the inertial dampeners failed the way they did, you would have severe disfigurement. So
yeah, look what happens. How many videos are there of a stewardess on an airplane smashing into the ceiling because of turbulence? Now just imagine that in space with explosions.
Oh, not just that. There's a DS9 episode in particular that actually was the topic of a Lore Reloaded video this past week that actually hits on this point.
Really?
I want to make sure I get the title of the episode right. I want to say it was is quite literally The Ship, where Cisco and crew are doing a survey on a planet. A roundabout is up in orbit. It's taken out, and then the Jem'Hadar fighter crashes on the surface. Apparently, what they found out was the inertial dampeners failed during the crash. And all the Jem'Hadar aboard and the Vorta aboard were essentially liquefied.
Ugh.
There was only one surviving creature that they didn't find out until towards the end of the episode. There was a founder on board.
Oh, yeah. You can't crush a founder. Because you know what? A founder always finds its level. I remember. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Well, from LRJ88, another thing. They go offline weirdly, too, since no one moves in the same direction when shit goes down. That was actually something that they got good on during TNG. Like, the coordinated movements, at least of the recurring cast. If you look, they move close enough in the same direction at the same time because they're damn good actors and actually put in the time and effort to do it.
I remember watching an interview of Shatner after Generations. And during the original series, all of the motions were done by vibrations on the camera. So basically, they have a motor on the side of the camera with an off-centered weight. Turn on the motor, and that physically vibrates the camera, and that was to mimic the blast or whatever. And then everybody on screen had to fake it. Mm-hmm. Well, in Generations, the bridge of the original Enterprise, or the
B.
TOS Enterprise B, had physical movement to it. It was actually on hydraulics and shifted around so that they didn't have to fake it because it physically moved. And Shatner was talking about that. He's like, this is the first time we've ever done that. We always just faked it. We'd lean left, lean right. And during the first take of it, the shaking kicked in, and he fell over and went to the ground like you would. And some young cast member, some like ensign, after the cut is done, comes over to him and helps him up. It's like, sir, are you okay? I mean, a man of your age shouldn't be on a set like this. You could get hurt. And at that point, I realized I was old.
And you know, that just goes to show Shatner really was Kirk.
Yeah.
Because for those who aren't the uber nerds that we are, did you ever get your hands on and actually read the original screenplay for Generations?
No, I didn't.
So they actually filmed some of the footage for this scene, but there was supposed to be an interlaced scene in addition to the champagne bottle going towards the Enterprise B that was shown during the opening credits. And this extra scene with dialogue was actually Chekhov and Scotty down on Earth somewhere trying to track something in air. And what it was Kirk skydiving from orbit. So think about that. This is like hours before the commissioning ceremony. They had it written in that Kirk was skydiving from an orbital platform because why not?
Yeah, I could see that. Was that that was the original reboot? I wonder if that's where they got the idea from.
You know, maybe.
Yeah, because they did an orbital dive.
Yeah, they did the dive onto the drilling platform in the reboot, which another good nod on the question of does anyone here have advanced combat training? And Sulu is like, I do. And they
I do.
actually stuck to in canon. Granted, it wasn't fencing, but it was closer to an ethnic uh,
Accuracy.
association, and yeah, accuracy with
Yeah.
it. So gotta give them that. And see,
Yeah.
that's the thing. If JJ actually was okay, I am parsing this now. I am not calling a no true Trekkie fallacy, but pretty close. Because while I while I believe he is appreciative of the franchise, I would not consider him a true Trekkie because he clearly favors Star Wars over Star Trek. Because as soon as that property became available, he was like, "Oh, I'm done with Trek.
Yeah.
You guys, Orsi, you guys can keep doing that shit. I'm going over here." He dropped that with the fucking quickness.
Which is the bigger franchise? That's a hard question.
It is because Star Trek has made more and better directors and behind the scenes careers and has produced more material. But when it comes to merchandise sales, I think Star Wars has it.
Well, I'm just talking as mentally, not necessarily just as a physical franchise and income and product and all that, but socially. Yes, Star Wars is huge, but Star Trek,
Oh yeah, intellectual property. Star Trek has them because how many current and prior and just one generation prior scientists credit Star Trek as part
oh,
of their reason for pursuing what they do and what
and
they did pursue.
it's not just the sciences either, because remember the original 76 episodes, what was it, 77 episodes during the height of a lot of other disruption in the country. So for like civil rights movement, women's
Hmm.
rights, things of that nature, they made casual acceptance of things that were not acceptable. So I think that there's no question Star Trek has had a bigger impact on society as a whole. Whether it is viewed as a bigger franchise or not, I don't know. Because Star Trek is kind of one of those things you're a nerd for. Star Wars is globally accepted. But
Yeah.
w- which aspect do you measure it on for which is a bigger franchise?
I would have to give, if you segment it out and actually tried to be objective about it, my analysis would go towards Trek because yes, Star Wars has the acceptance
Hmm.
and notoriety in that aspect, and it has the merchandising, the money aspect, the financial success uh, by comparison. But every other metric, number of spin-offs, amount of
Hmm.
content created, social impact and social commentary, influence of what people have done with their lives. Sorry, Trek wins all of those categories hands down.
Absolutely, hands down. Yeah, and Bo's comment, look at the total amount of screen candy versus money on the movies and TV series between Trek and Wars.
Yeah. With bang for the buck, Star Trek was definitely the better investment over the long term when you look at this the total franchise IP. I mean, let's just look at it this way: Star Trek 2, Star Trek 6, Star Trek 4, the three most popular and arguably the top 3 movies of the film franchise, all had budgets that were a fraction of the Star Wars franchise. And yet,
And yeah, and the original series, I know it's the first run, so you can't expect big money, but they were on such a shoestring budget they had people opening the automatic doors, and nobody could go to the bathroom during filming because you could hear it flushing. That's how well built their set was. Nobody could use the bathroom during filming.
Damn. And so from Sci-Strike, there was a NASA social called Star Trek and its influence on NASA culture. Yes, I was at that one. Well, I would hope so.
Now, think of this though. So Star Trek does have an unfair advantage when you're talking cultural wars. It's based on our home planet. Star Wars is not.
And it is science fiction. It was science fiction from the beginning, not science fantasy. And I think that is
Correct.
another big difference is there's so much of the Star Wars mythos that really is a fantasy genre set in space. Whereas Star Trek actually, Gene Roddenberry is like, no. This needs to be obtainable or believable, meaning it needs to be tangible to the human experience.
And it is.
Yeah, I mean, there is such, just from technological innovation alone, there are so many aspects of our daily life now that you can see the precursors and the influence from even just the original series. Mobile communication. Unheard of until Star Trek.
And now we have actual Bluetooth communicators.
Yeah.
Like exact replica communicators.
And what
I kind of want one.
And what about the Universal Translator, which in Star Trek has evolved? We have real-time translation programs and devices available to the common person today.
Didn't Google have a tricorder competition a couple years ago?
Wouldn't surprise me, and it wouldn't surprise me that that someone somewhere is working towards something like that.
Yeah, trying to remember what it was, because I think it had to do like specific things, not like a full-blown tricorder.
Yeah. More like at least the beginnings of the medical tricorder and medical scanning device. That would be such a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Question from the chat, but would you guys agree that Star Wars had a bigger impact on how films were made with the tech that was invented just for those films? Oh, yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Star Wars, when it comes to the visual effects, without Star Wars, Industrial Light and Magic would not exist. That company was started for the Star Wars franchise initially, and because of the work they did, they have provided visual effects and computer effects for so many different franchises. Yeah, that's where I do not discredit and discount the effect that Star Wars has had.
It's almost different metrics that you have to look at them from. We're just trying to compare something that almost can't be compared, I should say.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Each franchise has its different areas that it has had a greater impact. Because, yeah, I mean, Star Wars wasn't known for its stunning visual effects when it first came out. But at the same time, with what it was trying to do with lighting and studio models for a TV series, instead of using marionettes and something like that, which can be done well if that's the campy look you're going for. Looking at you, Thunderbirds are go. They were trying to, again, make it visually appealing, but again, stoke that wonder of how are they doing that? And those foundations started with a show like Star Trek, but ILM and Star Wars, which came out in the next decade, really took that premise, made it their own, and did an amazing fucking job with it. So there is a tie there, but yeah, the credit definitely lies more with the Star Wars franchise there.
Yeah. So, Chris Kelling, Google Translator still amazes me that it can translate printed text. Yes, it can, but it's not always accurate. And I will edit this story to maintain monetization. Uh, when I first got to Korea, I was using it to shop, and I was shopping for coffee. And apparently, the box I was looking at was dark roast. And Google Translate translated that to black, a specific part of the male body. and not the medical version of that word.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I've got. I'll share it with you. I had to take a screenshot of that, Jared. It blew my mind. So close, but close.
Oh, see, and that's another thing is you have words and terminology and phrasing that is an innuendo in one culture, but it doesn't translate over. Now, see, that's the thing. Like, a lot of people think that, initially think like the Japanese don't get American humor. Oh no, they are just as dirty, if not worse. But that is the issue, is that the translation between the languages lose that flavor to it. Friend of mine was dating a Japanese woman for a while, because, granted, that guy was over there for like 6 years at that point. And he was telling a story about how he was making one of those jokes about a friend of his that was in the shop with us, and his girlfriend's father knows English, but didn't quite get the joke until it was better translated by her into Japanese. And then he just had the grin that slowly came across his face, and the laughter that came out after was just something of beauty.
Yeah, so I live in an apartment. Go ahead, sorry.
Because the joke that he made was the question. Someone had asked the kid if he wanted a particular food item, to which this guy said, "Oh yeah, he really loves the meat." And something like that, to us, we immediately get the connotation. But because of that translation aspect, it took that just extra step of explanation, and then it was all bets are off at that point. Running joke of the night.
Yeah, I live in an apartment complex, and usually like once a week or every couple of weeks, there's some kind of announcement about the building. Um, and if I'm quick enough, I can get on my phone, pull up Google Translate, hit record, and it will translate it actively. Every time I have to take a screenshot of that and bring it into my office to one of my Koreans to translate correctly. So this one starts out pretty good. Please contact us for further details. Please refer to the bulletin board for further information. We will inform you again. Bicycle is here. It's prohibited to use or not fart. Thank you for choosing chicken on an empty stomach. Thank you.
You were good up until the end.
Yeah. Yeah. It is prohibited to use or not fart. So I brought that in, and my Koreans are going like, "Oh, that's the word they got wrong right here. Now it makes sense."
Wow.
Now I honestly don't care what they're saying. I just want to see what Google Translate gets wrong.
Okay, so Bo said he challenges anyone to use Google Translator to translate the following phrase from Danish. And apparently it's not a bullshit sentence. It's actually a grammatically correct sentence, and he followed it with good luck. So here's the thing. Using Google Translator, there is a YouTube channel that I recently came across from a lovely woman who is a very talented singer. But her big thing is she takes song lyrics, translates them to a random language in Google Translator, then translates it back to English
Oh.
and replaces the lyrics in the song with that translation. I lost you there for a moment. Or did I lose him completely?
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi disconnected for some reason.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to find this
Yeah.
channel, and I will post it in the space doc on UDSA. Which, by the way, yes, for those of you not on the server or haven't been to it in a little while, there was the request for a Kanar with Damar specific area under AT2 Productions. So, yes, that is what the Earth Space Doc text channel is for. Is everything nerdy related to this show, suggestions, feedback you guys have that you want to leave there, in addition to the comments below the video. That's your avenue. So, I'm surprised.
And I would say,
Has Nightbot been...
see if you can add.
Looks like Nightbot has not been posted. Did Nightbot break down?
I thought I saw one earlier.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah, Nightbot. Yeah, Nightbot was on there a while ago.
Yeah, but he's supposed to be posting the Discord link every 10 minutes or so.
Okay.
There we go.
There it is. Yeah.
God.
I'd say add a channel onto Discord about requested topics. See if anybody has anything specific they'd like us to discuss.
All right. Actually, you know what? Yeah. I'll do that. The only question is, what to name it?
So Erie, how's the experiment coming? I should have a video out on my Cavendish in next couple days. I have the preliminary results from the first run. It's not extensive data. It's only from one run because I had some issues. But we were able to actually measure the deflection. And then I'm going to go back into another series, and I'm going to run it for like the next 2 or 3 weeks, doing nothing but taking measurements and then compiling that all together. So enough for the flat Earth.
Looking forward to that. But
yeah, I was impressed. So I had a buddy come over a couple days ago to take the measurements because we had to figure out the 90-degree from the wire straight to the wall, so that we could measure to the start point and then the deflection point, because it is a very small deflection. And when we did the numbers, this is eyeballing with a laser rangefinder. So when we plugged them all into a triangle calculator, we were off that 90-degree turn by 2.5 degrees, I think. And we were both disappointed, like, we thought we had it. But then when we forced that to be a 90-degree turn, turns out that it's a 2-millimeter variance. So we were 2 millimeters off from our eyeball.
Oh, wow.
Which isn't bad. Yeah.
No, it's not. So, did you try that translation challenge from Bo yet?
I have not.
So I just did it, and Bo, I just have to say, I didn't know you were from New Zealand, because the English translation is sheep, sheep, not sheep, 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 lamb.
Bah.
And kid you not, I am copying and pasting the translation result into the live chat.
Nice. Sheep, sheep, not sheep. Sheep, sheep, lamb. So, what's the context of that, Bo?
Yeah, something you want to tell us there, buddy? I mean, we know your army and have spent a lot of time away from civilization.
Hey, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
Immediately reminded. I'm immediately reminded of Robin Williams from Live on Broadway talking about military intelligence for Afghanistan. We have what was it? A goat up here in the corner, or concubine.
See, now the advantage that Bo has though is that Google Translate can't translate sheep. So you can't really tell when they're saying no.
True.
Brainery. Sheep does not birth sheep. Sheep's birth lambs.
So that's what it was supposed to be. Interesting.
Love you too, Bo.
And plus, Ira has it right. He's the Welsh one. It seems like every country has a group or a region that they joke about in that way. For the UK, it's the Welsh. For the US, it's a large area of the Southeast.
Yeah. And a bit of the Midwest as well. That's kind of a joke that we give for Iowa. That's because everybody around Iowa hates Iowa.
What is there to hate about Iowa? Do you not like corn?
I grow corn in South Dakota. You know what? Iowa is actually an acronym. Idiots out wandering around.
Oh, I love it. Granted, part of why I love it, my ex-wife is from and lives in Iowa.
And for some reason, one of the smallest states in the country gets to have the primaries first. For reasons.
Oh, Iowa, don't let it confuse you. There are a number of states far smaller who think they're far more important, but aren't. Just look at New England. Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and then go a little further south, you got Delaware.
Yeah. But they're original. They're the OG.
True. Delaware does have that. They were the first ones to sign and declare, so.
And Iowa has a history of saying, fuck you, we're not agreeing. Okay, we'll come.
Oh my god. Fucking Jay Sherman. I love it. Chicago without Illinois is still Chicago. Illinois without Chicago is Iowa. I need to tell that to a friend of mine that lives in Illinois. Alright, Sweden has Norway and Denmark. Denmark has Sweden. Norway has Sweden. True. But what about Finland?
They have beautiful women. That's what they have.
Oh, I think that was hilarious on Team Skeptic's channel a day ago. Actually, almost exactly 24 hours ago. When Halsoy came on, and I made the crack, wait a minute, I thought you were Finnish. And the bad blood there is just palpable. So apparently, calling someone from Sweden or Norway, one of the calling them the other, annoyance. Calling them a Dane, bit more of an annoyance. Calling them a Finn, saying they're from Finland, apparently that's a death wish.
So Chris Kelling is in the middle of telling a regional joke right now.
Okay, let's see.
So Ole and Lars go ice fishing. Ole pulls out his thermos and Lars says to him, Ole, what you got there? Ole says, well, Lars, this is a thermos. It keeps things hot things hot, and it keeps cold things cold. After a while, Lars gets curious and says, well, Ole, what you got in the thermos? And Ole says, well, Lars, I got a popsicle and 2 cups of coffee. Yep, there's the Norwegian humor for you.
I love it. And that's another thing. people who hail or have ties to the Midwest tend to have more that sense of humor, because that's where most of the Scandinavian and even Central European people ended up, was out in the Midwest.
I've got Norwegian blood and German blood, and the same with the wife. And what's hilarious, so I've been gone for 20 years. Get me around like 4 people from the Midwest, and that accent comes back out, don't you know? And you don't even have to try it; it just happens.
Oh,
and normally it's not that. No, it's not that bad, but it does creep out.
Oh, and I've told people this, is that regionally I am a mutt. I was born in Virginia, then lived in Michigan, then lived in Connecticut, and during the following 13 years would spend a lot of time back out in Michigan. Which is why there are a number of people who, there are times they can't pin down where I am from due to a lack of a distinguishable accent. But get me really drunk, a Southern drawl comes out.
Yeah.
During regular speak, a number of the flexible terminology that I use are more Midwest, Northern Midwest, definitely Michigan, because yes, it is soda. It's not pap.
Not Coke. Everything's Coke.
Oh, that's a Southern thing.
Yeah, that's annoying as shit.
Oh God. I still laugh about it. It's like, oh, what do you want to drink? Oh, I'll just do a Coke.
Oh, Coke.
I'll do a Coke. What flavor?
Coke. Yeah, I'm originally from South Dakota, almost on the North Dakota and Minnesota border. That's where I grew up. Born and raised, and then left at 21 when I joined the military, and I've been gone for the past 20 years. Oh shit, speaking of which, what's the date today?
Today is, well, depends. It's the 10th here.
4 days from 20 years.
Nice.
So my accent has kind of been destroyed by the military since then.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it sneaks back in every once in a while.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Although there's just something about just how ingrained a Southern accent is. People who have one from birth, that shit
it's never going anywhere.
Never goes away. Unless,
that's like that's like herpes. You can't get rid of it, no matter how hard you try.
All right, making me have to use the Google foo.
So Mr. Victory was born in Minot, ended up in Texas. Like I said, Victory, Britain, South Dakota. It's a town of about 1,200 people. It's right on the North Dakota border and about 40 minutes from Minnesota.
Yeah, so I knew Nimitz was from Texas. Didn't know it was specifically Fredericksburg. Oh, I guess Mo was trying to find that other YouTube account that does the translations that I had mentioned.
Yeah, the translate and translate back.
Yeah. Oh, some of those are absolutely just freaking comedy gold.
I think it's been like 20 minutes since we mentioned Star Trek.
Yeah, but see, that tends to happen when we interact with the chat. Sometimes you bastards distract us. Although here's another question off of part of the topic that we've touched multiple times in multiple ways earlier in the show, and this came from Psystrike when he first showed up. Is the person who steps out of a transporter the same person that walked in?
I don't want to take a hard stance on that, because in reality, I would say it has to be different. But I'm going to suspend reality and accept that it's the same person.
Well, so here's the question. And this is the crux of my stance on it. What do you define as the individual? Because the memory patterns are there, the psychological patterns are there, the brainwaves are there, and the physical body, while on one end is destroyed, on the other end is reconstructed, but it still has the genetic makeup of the original person. So until you get into a situation of duality like Tom and Will Riker, you would have to treat them as the same person.
But so here's the question, though. What prevents them from doing it again? Because that basically just makes the transporter a giant replicator.
It is. That's actually... So the transporter, they ended up mixing the two because there is enough similarity there that it is a matter reorganizer. One is meant for physical relocation of an object. The other is quite literally meant for just, hey, you want this? Here you go.
So where does the matter come from when you get beamed down to a planet?
In universe, I think the explanation is that they use local atoms at the destination to reorganize into the material being sent down, be it a person, organic or inorganic.
And what prevents them from just replicating people?
Safeguard in the buffer that it dumps the information upon completion of the transporter cycle. So that's where actually the TNG episode with the Dyson sphere, when Scotty made an appearance.
Yep.
And had his epic line to the computer for the holodeck. Fucking love it. No bloody A, B, C, or D. But so what he did is, at the same time that he initiated the matter stream for the transporter for himself and the other survivor, he then
He got locked in the buffer.
Got locked in the buffer because he put the transporter system into a diagnostic loop. But because of how long it had been, once they pulled one pattern out, they had a limited time to pull the other pattern out before it degraded in the buffer, because when the buffer was going unused, it was a static element. But once they pulled his information out, the rest of the information tried to essentially refill the buffer without enough actual information to do it.
So is it a safeguard with the system that auto dumps the pattern? And is there anything physically preventing that dump where you... Because I would think that would be the greatest technology for an army. Just replicate your soldiers. Which makes me think that it can't be a destruction recreation.
Well, it's both. So in order to remove the person from one location, you have that deconstruction on the transporter pad of the ship. It's actually probably a part of built in as part of the scanning process where, okay, we're gathering all this information, because keep in mind, you're getting quantum level readings of everything to make sure that they're put back together right so they don't die.
Yeah. And so there's a couple questions up above, and Bo points out, how the hell would Data be able to successfully use the transporter? Now, I'm guessing the question is based upon the quantum level of his neural network. Or not neural, what is it called?
The neural net, his positronic brain.
Yeah, because that has to... I mean, everything about him is electronically based on who he is, and if you get a few electrons in the wrong spot, that could change who he is.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not just that. With the difficulty they've had in reproducing a Soong type android, it makes you wonder if he can use a transporter, why can't they use a transporter to create a second one and have it be functional.
Or is this a plot hole that we just have to accept?
That's what it's actually looking like.
Yeah. And then Brainery had a question. Don't they need the radioactivity on a planet for it to work? I don't know where he's got that question coming from. I'm not positive.
That is actually something I'm unfamiliar with. I know certain types and amounts of radiation will actually interfere with transporters, which is where they ended up coming up with the transport pattern enhancers that actually you have to use quite often in Star Trek Online. Almost as
I haven't played that.
Almost as if they did it just to give you something else to do on certain missions.
Irie asked, does Spock kneel every time he uses the transporter? I think that's just with the retcon. I don't think the original did.
No, he never did in the in the first JJ movie. He did it.
Yeah.
As part of, he knew the location he was going to, so it was one of those as a way to ensure that he would be stable and not just start tripping over shit as he materialized.
Oh, was he materializing down on Vulcan as it was being destroyed?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, and he's talking about the Riker episode where Riker was split. The planet, there was a double, had some weird radioactivity.
Oh yeah, for that split, there was an atmospheric condition going on that it pretty much reflected the beam back to do that. But here's the thing: if you are able to save a pattern in the buffer and not have the buffer be a dump at the end of the cycle, then you can continually just outputting the same thing as long as you have the local material needed for the rematerialization process. Now, granted, at first, I think when they first tried to explain the actual mechanism of the transporter, they tried to say that it reduced you to your individual atoms, then through an energy beam relocated those atoms and reconstituted them.
No, that was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. That's what happened to
Yes.
Mike Chocolate. Or no, Mike. What was it? Mike TV.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, getting into technology like that, it can be dangerous, but at the same time, despite the risk during testing, if they could get to where transportation is at that level, and if that ends up making something like my motorcycle purely recreational, I would not complain one bit. Because think of how much traffic are on the roads would be unnecessary if point-to-point transport...
It would make my move to DC so much better.
Yeah. And you know what, Mr. Victory, I think that is it. Because of the cloning and genetic manipulation that took place during the eugenic wars historically, and the pretty much the fear and illegal nature of that sort of tampering, it would explain why they would have it required to be written into transporter systems to dump the pattern buffer upon completion.
But why wouldn't malicious actors ignore that?
It's a question of how else would it affect the technology. And you know what?
And Pig, why would we waste money on roads at that point? Because roads are fun to drive on very fast.
Yes. Yes, they are.
Oh, dude, I saw a Lamborghini leaving base a couple days ago.
Okay.
Parked on the wrong side of the road with flashers on.
Okay, what flag officer thought it would be a good idea?
I think it was a local. Because it didn't come on base. It was right outside the gate. I see a Ferrari at least once a month. And there's probably like 4 or 5 Porsches in my building. But yeah, first Lamborghini I've seen since I've been here. I don't know how the hell he gets around. Because Koreans drive like assholes.
Oh, Pig started moving things around.
He's transporting them.
Okay, so more people are... Alright, Pig, got a job for you now. That new segment of UDSA for Kanar with Damar that you made, make sure it is visible to everyone.
Everybody.
Yes, fight flatter scammers, bad roads, cracked my rims. Have you been to New England? I actually had to buy a new front rim for the motorcycle because I found a dent in the rim and I wasn't going to trust it.
All right, Bo just posted a link that he wants us to watch of a Star Trek wedding.
Okay,
I can't loop my audio back in.
No, and I'm not switching my audio to be able to do that. So,
Yeah.
for those of you interested, go ahead, click that link and watch it because we are actually hitting the end of our allotted time anyways.
Yeah, I've got an interview coming up in an hour. I got to get ready.
Yep. And in the meantime, for those people not on the Discord server, I will force Nightbot to do its goddamn job again. So you can join the Discord server. Pig is working on making the Kanar with Damar area its own thing, which we will get the basic channel types set up, but fear not, they will be listed with general titles initially, so you know what the purpose of them are, but then we will be renaming them with topic specific and topic associated type of names. So with that, this has been quite the relaxing show and multi-topic as usual. And thank you.
My coffee's finally kicking in since it's almost 7 now.
I was going to say thank you for being awake this time. And we will be giving Geostreber a ration of a hard time later on because this is 2 in a row now that he's missed. And we set the time that we did so he would be able to jump on it and...
Exactly. We're this early for me, for him.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the thing. We're... For those who may not be aware, we have Geostreber in Central Europe, Furball in Korea, and then the other 2 regular panel members, myself and Thoughts by Jay, we are in the U.S., but on opposite coasts. So trying to find a time that works for all 4 of us was interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It's always inconvenient for one person.
Yeah, and honestly, the way it's been lately, it's only been convenient for me. But with that, thank you all for showing up. Keep an eye on the Discord server. We are having the updates and changes and improvements. And can we call it a minor refit? I mean, they do that all the time in Star Trek. They do changes that appear to be major changes, but no. It's just a minor refit.
Yeah, this is the UDSA A Discord.
Well, with that, if you enjoy what we do, we have the Patreon in the description below. You can support the channel there. It also does support the AT2 Moto channel. As some of you saw, we have the super chats come in. Thank you, Aussie Globehead and NAN and MA2 Fletcher Eisler. And with that, the next show coming up is on Friday for the next installment of Veterans Talk Weekly. And in the meantime, keep an eye on AT2 Moto. Another video is about to launch.
Sweet.
See all of you next time.
Later, people. Thanks for coming.